Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Enhancing Security by Streamlining Third and Fourth Party Risk Management. My name is Allison Furneaux. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for CyberSaint Security, and today I have with me Padraic O'Reilly, our Chief Product Officer and co-founder, and we also have Janet Van, Product Manager at IBM Cloud. So today we're going to cover the challenges in the industry, some of our approaches to solving these challenges, specifically around third and fourth party risk management in the cloud. We're going to dive into a live demo of the IBM Cloud Security and Compliance Center Solution Suite, highlighting the integration with CyberSaint and showcasing our partnership between the two companies. So we're very excited about this. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Padraic to kick us off, and then we'll jump into the live demo.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for attending. Very excited to present what we're doing with IBM. So if you just give me a moment, I'm going to click into our slides. Here we go. So IBM and CyberSaint, we started working together about a year ago now, and it was around a major problem. In the cloud and a major problem just generally for the enterprise. It relates to securing cloud native applications with IBM Cloud and automating controls. This has been really exciting because we reached sort of the frontier of control automation just in time to start our conversations with IBM. And to see the use cases spill in and begin to manifest inside our partnership has been just tremendously exciting. So I'm going to jump into a little bit of the slides here. So this is a longstanding problem, cloud native applications, vendor and third-party risk. We all know how this is a problem. It's for too long been overly reliant on manual solutions. We have customers that try to do this, have been trying to do this with spreadsheets for years. It's just not possible anymore when you have hundreds of vendors. And there's no visibility for organizations into their vendor ecosystem. If they're always struggling to update the assessments and the security controls, they lose the plot entirely with respect to risk. So independent software vendors are required to meet security requirements if they're going to be hosted in IBM Cloud, and they're required to meet them in the form of controls to manage risk and protect sensitive data. Organizations are relying on subjective attestations from their vendors to assess risk. This has been the state of play for years. We all know this. And the dream has always been, let's automate it. Let's automate those controls. Let's get the data in. Let's baseline ISVs, third-party, fourth-party vendors inside a solution, and then view risk in near real-time risk. So organizations have historically lacked a mechanism to do this. IBM can do this. And in our partnership, we now pull in the data in an automated fashion. So how does this solution actually work? So with IBM SCC, the new offering, we actually have a framework in play that IBM created themselves with a partner. It's a financial sector profile. It's a well-known security control framework, SP 853. So you look at the actual controls that are in place for an individual ISV, and you get that data automatically. Now, what can you do when you get that data automatically? You can walk it over into risk. So what are you talking about now? Now you're not talking about throwing around spreadsheets, continuously updating them, talking across practices. Now you're talking about CNAP with actual real-time risk involved. The approach totally streamlines the adherence to industry frameworks because that data is being pulled in an automated manner. It centralizes the data so that risk models can work with it. And organizations are able to manage their own unique risk profiles. So controls now are automatically lit up, and Janet will walk us through that. And because at CyberSaint, we have a very flexible approach to risk, organizations can get comfortable with any one of our risk models. We have the FAIR model. We have a model we co-developed with Booz Allen Hamilton we call CyberInsight. We have standard models out of NIST as well. So when we work with the enterprise, We like to be as flexible as possible. And this is really the first offering that brings risk management to CNAP in an automated fashion. So it's very, very exciting. I'm going to move over to here, just to illustrate the value a little bit. One of the other aspects of this offering that really, when I show to customers, they get very excited about is the ability to communicate with executives. The executive dashboard right here will help to socialize the actual risk across the entire cloud. So you're pulling in this data at scale. You're automating many instances of ISVs, but yet you can still view the risk in an aggregate sense. And that data is updating automatically. So it's dynamically mapping the security and compliance posture to frameworks and assessments and rolling that data up into strategic initiatives. So there is a level of communicability for the teams that are working with this data that has been very elusive to date. So what does it allow you to do? You can implement cyber risk quantification across all of your cloud native application environments, and you can link the results in a risk register, enabling real-time insights into areas of risk. So customers are looking at a continuously secure and compliant cloud environment. They can look at scenarios. They can socialize those scenarios with customers, with their management. We're also augmenting all of this data with actuarial data from advising. So we're grounding the risk discussion in actual empirical data and then looking at the posture in real time. Formerly, many sorts of cloud risks were done manually, so you weren't updating in real time. You would miss things. Organizations would miss things. There's a significant danger that the process of risk assessment was always retrospective. As soon as the data was in, it was dead in a sense. This is pushing this to the next level where you're actually getting the real-time data. A solution to centrally manage and automate an organization's security risk and compliance to regulatory standards, as well as prioritize the risk operations. You can now have the conversation around risk, and it can be in real time. What have we achieved on the actual frameworks? This to me is staggering, given my background in the industry. We are automating 30% of a control framework with IBM, 30% of a control framework, and it's not just any control framework, it's 853, which, as we all know, is a very substantive, deep standard. So 30% of the controls are being automated by this solution, which is amazing. Third and fourth party risks, so we're pulling in the data on ISVs. We can also benchmark the actual infrastructure as well for the fourth party analysis. And now we're getting continuous risk management with multiple risk models. I just want to speak a little bit about why, excuse me, multiple risk models are important. You often see in the industry an approach to risk that tries to benchmark it in a black box way. Say, trust us. The vendor that provides risk will say, trust us. We have a risk model. It's quite complex, but we maintain it, and it's our risk model. It's proprietary. This is just not how risk and compliance teams work. They don't work like that. They have their own risk models. They're often industry standard, and they like flexibility. They need flexibility. They require it. In order to socialize risk with the board, it has to be transparent. It has to be, able to explain to executives. When you have a risk model that isn't terribly transparent, there isn't a lot of trust built. There isn't a lot of integrity in the process. So here's the value for the third and fourth party risk use case. Speed and accuracy. Speed and accuracy. What are we talking about formerly? If we look at formerly, we're talking about individuals going in to self-attestation assessments, checking them, aggregating them across all of the ISVs, across all vendors. And we still see this problem at scale in enterprise outside of the cloud. It's almost impossible to solve in a manual way. In fact, you could even argue that not only is it almost impossible to solve, trying to solve it manually actually makes sure or ensures that you're not going to solve it. So you need the speed and accuracy of the control and risk data. You need to centralize and standardize with real-time control and risk data. So risk reporting for executive decision-making, why is that important? Well, you need to be able to socialize the program. In order to make improvements to a security program, you need to be able to talk about the possible risk exposures. In order to get budget for new initiatives, for remediations, in order to even understand whether or not you need insurance to transfer risk, you need to be able to benchmark across all of your ISVs. And that's what we're doing. Not only that, you also need to be able to talk in a transparent way about actual risk exposures. If you have a risk model that isn't easily understood, that isn't informed by data that is recent or near real time, then you're on the back foot with respect to actual making the case around your security program. What are we talking about in terms of time and cost savings? Our solution significantly reduces the time required to assess enterprise vendors, and I think the next slide gets into that. Efficient risk management visibility, I've discussed that. When you can present risk scenarios alongside actuarial data with transparent risk models, all on live data, you're on a much stronger footing with respect to making the case around remediation and budget. Automated remediation strategies. Some of our new releases in the product get into remediation suggestions and allow professionals to understand the ROI. We've actually built in security return on investment modeling into our remediation suite. And I'll talk a bit about that in a moment. So here's a case study. A Fortune 100 insurance company came to us. They had a massive challenge around monitoring and getting assessments from their third and fourth party risk. They had been doing it manually for years. It was always time consuming, and not just time consuming. For the professionals involved, it's exhausting, and it borders on the demoralizing at times as well. So how do you make this efficient? Well, they attempted to conduct over 280 assessments annually, but they could only get to 50 a year. So they were never even making it to their goal because they were relying on manual vendor risk review. It was coming in manually, and they could never get ahead of the analysis on the actual exposures with respect to cyber risk. So we worked with them very closely and reduced the assessment time. And this is going to sound a little crazy, but it's actual, it's real. We're not just throwing this up on a slide and making this claim. It went from 12 months to do the 280 plus to less than 1 month. So if you think about that for a moment, it's quite staggering. And I would say the efficiency gains inside IBM might be even greater because you're automating 30% of these actual control frameworks. So now we have continuous monitoring of ISV risk posture. It lowers cybersecurity risk, and it yields a very substantial cost savings for the company. So reduce the assessment time, continuous real-time view of risk posture. So when you're discussing risk upstairs, that data is not 6 months old, it's not 3 months old, or it's not just a hodgepodge of differently aged data feeds. Massive cost savings achieved, enhanced risk monitoring across vendors, business units, and subsidiaries, because they can actually get ahead of the risk now. Informed decision-making and a culture of robust security actually established. So this is just a glimpse into what automating at the level of the ISV, at the level of third and fourth party risk can do. And I think Janet is going to share a little bit about how it's viewed from the IBM side. So Janet, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Patrick. Really great points, and really exciting to see how our integrations together has been able to build a really strong end-to-end solution. So just take a little bit of a step back here to talk more about, in addition to the challenges that Padraic has been talking about as far as the third and fourth party and risk overall, in addition to that, we're really recognizing that, in the regulated markets, especially with our clients today, we know that they are adopting a hybrid multi-cloud strategy to maintain, strong operational resiliency posture, minimizing their concentration risk on any one vendor environment, then also containing that risk overall. And the challenge that they're really hitting to that is that there's a mix of proprietary and cloud native tools that they have to manage and be able to manage overall. And that piece is going to be really challenging for them, which ends up leading to overall tool sprawling, increased spending, and then also poor visibility. So overall, how do we address those pieces is by really providing an overall end-to-end solution suite, right? So not introducing more tools into your environment infrastructure, but really being able to provide, as we mentioned, a CNAPP, but also Plus, right? A cloud native application protection platform tool. But in addition to that, really with the integration with CyberSaint, we're offering that end-to-end cyber risk management, which is really going to be unique for us in our positioning here. So you'll see that we're really focused on our positioning with our compliance and risk posture overall, but it's important to know what we're offering in addition to this suite that is feeding into this real-time data that we're providing into CyberSaint, especially with how we're protecting workloads, managing and addressing threats and vulnerabilities in real time, automating any sort of risks that you need to address beforehand in the development lifecycle, in addition to protecting that data long term. And all of this is done across hybrid multi-cloud. So I think that's the really key part here, is that we're not limiting it to just IBM Cloud. And similar to CyberSaint, right, this is applicable across the clouds, across the third and fourth party vendors. And I think that's really crucial here, as we're hearing from our customers what types of challenges they're facing and how we can address those. So in the next slide here, I'll briefly talk about some of the key use cases and how we're addressing this. So we have a proactive security and compliance framework, and CyberSaint is a key part of that, because we understand that with every organization and in a regulatory enterprise environment, they have to be able to define their security and compliance requirements and controls, as well as their own framework they need to follow. And so what we do is try to provide, again, predefined profiles, also customizable profiles and policies, so that way you can address those types of your framework as well as supporting that. And we'll talk a little bit more about what Patrick highlighted here, which is what's differentiating for us, is the IBM Cloud Financial Services Framework, which is based on NIST 853, which is going to be really key here, as well as the industry-leading regulatory compliance standard, as well as other types of industry frameworks such as CIS benchmarks. And as they are defining their framework, they have to move back and forth between these types of personas, where as a CISO or CRO, you're defining your framework and then going into how do you implement that, how you get to your teams, your security teams, your compliance teams to implement and automate these security controls that need to be addressed, and especially proactively earlier in the DevSecOps lifecycle. So a big part of what we're offering here is also, in addition, is to be able to deploy an architecture that is built in with security up front, especially the security controls. And a lot of that is going to be in reference to our primary frameworks here that are available, in addition to being able to embed that in your CI/CD pipeline prior to, so that way you are addressing those types of controls ahead of time to reduce the number of risks that comes forward as we go monitor the compliance and risk postures. And so another big part that we'll talk about that too is end-to-end, not only monitoring, but being able to protect and detect and respond to the different types of risk and vulnerabilities that you're going to see in your workloads across hybrid multi-cloud, and also being able to protect that data. So having that level of encryption and key management, as well as data tokenization and encryption, to be able to protect the data end to end, so not just only in the workloads, but also in your databases. So really all over and across. And when you get to the stage of assessing, right, hopefully you're having less vulnerabilities, less threats that you're there. But if anything is detected, right, we have that that unified, centralized view of your compliance and risk posture, which will show how we're doing that with SEC and CyberSaint. And in addition to that, how we are helping supply, some level of remediation, but in addition to that, really the reporting, which is going to be a big part of what we're finding is how do we not only provide visibility, but also some level of reporting here, so that way businesses and organizations can assess their risk. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we'll just quickly go through some of these key solutions and then really hit into CyberSaint and how we're doing that and proposing that to our clients. Real quick, just to say, we'll talk a little bit about the workload protection piece. And again, with the compliance posture, you can see here, it's done across hybrid multi-cloud. And just to briefly show through the policies, apologies for not being able to showcase that earlier, you can really see, again, we have policies across for threat, vulnerabilities, and posture, and there's all going to be some level of alignment there. What you'll see here is, again, we have those different types of regulatory compliances, as I mentioned, NIST, FedRAMP, SOC 2, in addition to your industry standards across your hybrid multi-clouds. And so again, deep diving into all of the posture findings that you can see here. Again, this is across all of your infrastructure. For example, you can have it at a granular level for a dashboard view or across the board. And what's going to be really nifty here is being able to see the granularity in the results and how you can address those controls. And more importantly, viewing remediation steps, right? So a big part of this is how can you review permissions at a SIM level, right? Your cloud identity entitlement management, in addition to what are some recommendations for you to automate remediation and how can you connect those to your commands. And so that's going to be a big part. And then in addition to that is, do you want to accept this risk, right? Is this a risk that is not major to you, or do you want to prolong the risk at some point and come back to it and make sure that you have some level of automation that is applied. So that's a big part of how do we proactively address the risk across before it comes into our results finding. And in addition to that, so with security posture management, we're also doing the workload protection aspect. We can see your level of vulnerabilities. So again, at a high level here, you can see the unique vulnerability detections. It's really going to be great here to see, what level of vulnerabilities you have, so you can prioritize them, which is going to be really what's unique is not only we offering the real-time threat detection that's continuous, so it's not done per scan. Once you do your scan, it's continuously detecting threats. In addition to that, you can see the top pervasive vulnerabilities and be able to evaluate and remediate against those. And I think a big part of what's going to be unique here is this level of prioritization view that you can see to be able to see how your vulnerabilities are stacking against and across your infrastructure, in addition to how can you start addressing those. So of course you can go granularly into each of these, similarly to the security and compliance controls, looking at the assets names, being able to see exactly what packages are impacted. So really providing you that in-depth as far as the vulnerabilities across the board. So that's at a high level what we're offering here specifically in workload protection. Now let me talk about how we're bringing this all in together and how it all goes into CyberSaint. So Security and Compliance Center today is it's really going to be our centralized container here for all of the results that are aggregated across our solutions. And right now they're pretty tightly integrated. So you'll see here a dashboard view that we have an overall dashboard view that complements and pulls in the results across our solutions. And for a strong example of something that we are pushing out the door today is called Composite Profiles, which is to support our hybrid multi-cloud story. And it's based on NIST 853, which we talk about more of as, again, leading industry standard and something that's key, as well as how the majority of the controls can translate overall. And so you can see the level of success rate as well as the drift that is detected across your infrastructure. And the really great view here is that you can see, again, at the control level and resource level, how it's impacted. So for example, if you go into AC2, which is an infamous control for account management, you can exactly see the specifications across hybrid multi-cloud controls, and as well as the resources and the components that we have here that are going to be assessed against and how they're going, right? So what areas are compliant, what areas are non-compliant, how do you assess that and view more details as far as what is being done there and the impact that you're viewing in this visibility. And so in addition to that, again, with the resource level, you can see that across. So again, with the hybrid multi-cloud view, you can really see how we have the integrations done end to end. And you can also download the reporting. So again, at a high level, how do we provide this data in real time and be able to provide a centralized level of visibility? Now, I'm going to go a little bit into the profiles that we have that are complementary to what we saw in the other view there. Again, just hitting briefly into our NIST 853, you can see the different level of controls as well as being able to see the groupings. So if you can group it by specification or component and category, you can really assess the control level across the board. And so this is going to be a big part that we're looking forward to bring forward and continue to bring forward with our integration here with CyberSaint. And so I want to take a step into looking at our financial services framework, which is based on NIST. And with the financial services framework here, this is something unique IBM Cloud has offered as supporting our financial services cloud today. And again, very similar type of control view that you saw in the NIST 800. This is very specific to our predefined profile, but of course you can customize it and view it how you need to see fit. And what we have here that you'll see similarly in CyberSaint here shortly is we have all assessments that are available today across the operational and technical controls. Now Security and Compliance Center is going to automate the technical controls and the controls that can be automated. So all of the ones that can be automated will have an assessment that we'll have today that you can view and run a scan against, so that way you get that data across the board. In addition to that, you can view the control level in our docs specifically for this framework, where you can see how are we doing, what is the level of controls that are available, and specifically with a good example, which is RA5, so assessing the vulnerabilities. You can really see, again, the control requirements within each of those in relation to NIST, as well as any sort of additional guidance that we have for IBM Cloud and our financial services cloud, and as well as the rules and requirements that we have in support for that. And all of this is going to be really well integrated into CyberSaint that we'll see here shortly, in addition to any sort of NIST supplemental guidance. So that's really end to end, what we're offering at the board level and being able to really address those risks and controls. Now, I want to talk more about how do we pull this into CyberSaint, right? How is CyberSaint pulling all of the data that we're doing as we were reducing the risk and the vulnerabilities? There's still going to be some level of reporting we need to provide. So with CyberSaint today, the exciting part here is that, it's got a great level of centralization in the risk that is available. And, this nice view here is just going to easily allow you to access your different views across your frameworks that you're applying against your third and fourth parties. And that's going to be a big part, is that we're hitting the hybrid and multi-cloud, but we're also, again, hearing that the supply chain and the third and fourth parties are another realm of challenges of how to aggregate those risks, how to estimate and evaluate against those. And so with CyberSaint, we really are seeing that that's addressing that across third and fourth parties and really for the financial services sector. But again, this can be applicable across all types of organizations and industries. And so we'll deep dive a little bit into how, again, the financial services framework in particular is being fed and automated throughout the assessments in CyberSaint. So for an example here, we'll look into a very specific one where you can see, again, with your dashboard level view, it's going to offer that level of granularity that you see at the home page and executive dashboard view we'll see here. And with the control level, again, you can see all the controls that are available. We have 280 controls. And the ones that you can see, again, we have a control tag that can be done based on SEC automation. This is something new that we've been able to pull in with the team here. In addition to how do we view that automation at the control level? So for example, we can take a look at, again, RA5, the vulnerability scanning, and how we're doing those pieces. And so you can see, how the IBM SEC is enabled here, and the user responsibility score. And I really think the key part with the policies that you'll see here is, again, the role policy that is attached. So again, very similar to that end-to-end view that I showcased in our profile view, and showcasing the status. Is it compliant? Has it failed? And what has passed, right? So what assets has passed overall. So the really great thing about what we're seeing with CyberSaint in particular is being able to connect those results and findings into this view and be able to also showcase at this level what is passing and at what resource level. So it's offering that level granularity that you can see here. And so that's really exciting to see as far as this level of automation. And I think that's a big part of the story that, Padraic was talking about here is how do we address automation of these controls in an effective way? And SEC is going to be doing that and feeding that into CyberSaint. So that way we have that level of visibility across your risk. And something that I really want to call out here that I think is exciting is, when we talk about third and fourth party risks in particular in your cyber risk, I think a big part of what the organizations and our clients are looking for is, okay, we got our risk, we got the visibility, how do we report that, right? So board and operational level reporting is really key here. And I think that it's really great to see the number of types of reports that we have accessible here through CyberSaint, because this is an easier way for the top level persona to be able to say, hey, how are we doing against our risk? How do we report that easily without having to add additional manual processes on top of that? And so an example of that we heavily push out is the executive risk report, where it's going to give you that breakdown just at the top level of how you're doing against your risk, whether it's at the framework level or across the board, and being able to aggregate that view overall from a control family perspective, top 3 that have been remediated, top opportunities that you'd be able to do that against, and then the different types of threat sources that are currently being evaluated against. And so I think that's a big part of what we can offer today. Now I'll pause there, and Padraic, if you have anything to add. I think again, end to end, this is really a key part of how we're automating SEC with CyberSaint.
Absolutely. And it's so exciting to see you go from the solution you're offering and the data sources directly into the product. It's very powerful to be able to visualize, per control, how you're doing and what your status is in real time. And then the additional risk visualizations that come out of it are really there to help teams socialize their programs. And it's all predicated on real-time data, which is it's a thing of beauty, frankly, Janet.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Yes, so that's really, what we are doing from an automation perspective. And I do want to highlight just a few more of the features that I think from a CyberSaint perspective, we've been able to pitch out to our clients and organizations. And I'll let Padraic add some more highlight there. So something in addition that I want to briefly talk about is the governance and risk. So with governance, again, we're really trying to highlight that end-to-end, how are we managing hybrid multi-cloud, including the supply chain vendors. And this governance dashboard is a key part of, what a lot of the organization's mission is how do we govern better across the different types of proprietary and cloud native tools that we have. So this view here is really nifty because you can be able to organize your metrics across the board and be able to view against critical and non-critical vendors. So that way you have that automatic view here. I'll let Padraic highlight a little bit more about this, but this is again a really key part about how we are offering a level of additional governance here at a risk level for our organizations and in this highly regulated market.
Absolutely. And what our governance dashboards allow organizations to do is drop in by tagging any view they want. So they can look at third-party critical, they can look at third-party moderate, they can look at third-party low, and aggregate across the ISVs, aggregate even in the fourth-party risk as well, and have these targeted analyses for gap to goal for leadership. So you're pulling across, in theory, hundreds of assessments here. And the ability to sort of view that data in the aggregate is very powerful and helps to make the case around the entire program.
Fantastic. And in addition to that, again, another beauty to the view here that we get is the risk register. So, a lot about what we're offering here, again, Padraic talk about, the different types of risks that risk models that they can assess against. And that's a big part of, again, not, SEC from that perspective is just providing more of the proactive and remediary steps of how to assess your controls and the risks that you're identifying. But this is a really great view that we can leverage here with CyberSaint, where, how do you fare against different types of risk models that your organization is setting or has to go against. And I think this is a nifty view also because, a big part of this is also not only evaluating and getting understanding of your risk, but also financial impact of the risk here. So, I know that a big part of, what's newer here that with CyberSaint is also adding risk and being able to add an industry risk. And I think that's going to be key here because, we're talking about financial services because we know that this is a big gap in what we have to address in this industry. But of course, this is applicable across industries. And so I think a nice part about this is you can have this additional layer of industry risk, which I'll let Patrick talk more about, where you can, again, get a sense of how you're doing against your risk based on your company size and being able to manage what type of, loss that you might be having.
Absolutely, yes. And the nice thing about adding the industry risks and allowing organizations to sort of drop in their industry, their estimated revenue and estimated company size, is that we're pushing real actuarial data into here, over 1 million rows from Advisen. It's data that we work with very closely and we model for organizations. Historically, the conversation around risk can often get mired in what do the actual likelihoods look like? What do the impacts actually look like? This really simplifies the discussion and adds a layer of maturity to any company that is doing a risk analysis, because this is pulled from the largest actuarial cyber loss data set on the planet. So that really helps professionals get an understanding. They also can adjust based on their individual circumstances, the risk, but this is a baseline out of the box that provides very strong context for any risk analysis. And in addition, we're doing it across 3 risk models. So financial organizations are fairly mature with respect to how they practice risk. They understand probability generally. They've been working with it for maybe longer than a lot of other sectors. But because of that, because of their maturity, they have a pretty high bar when it comes to risk analysis. So having multiple models that some institutions might be more comfortable with FAIR, other institutions might be more comfortable with another kind of risk model. But here you have an analysis ready to go right away, and it's immediately done with the data that's been automated through SEC, which is amazing. If you think about it, you've got real-time control data informing risk. I've been in this industry long enough to know that years ago I would talk to security professionals, and this was in some ways considered the holy grail. So very powerful, and our collaboration is yielding some very powerful analysis here. So Janet can show the managed dashboards aspect as well, just over on the right. And now the executive dashboard. So here, this is about grounding the conversation, in historical risk, what's classically been seen in a space, and this is going back years. So on the left, you can see the top industry cybersecurity risks. This is a series of loss events presented. It's really just grounding the conversation in empirical loss. It's very powerful when you say that, you're basing this on actual data. So on the right is sort of how you're baselining your own program, or an organization might baseline their own program. They're next to each other, so you can sort of reality test both approaches. You can talk a little bit about, on the left, what's happened, how we think about risk. This data is all attached to the risk analysis. So the posture management is now attached, and below you can see, and this is highly configurable. So you can always go in and edit this based on sort of the conversation you want to have. So CSF maturity is well understood. And this is all coming out of 853, projected through the CSF, through the informative references. You can make a case around maturity here for your executives, where we're lagging, where we're strong. And on the bottom, just to highlight your program in the aggregate, how many regulatory frameworks you're working with, to maybe ask for resource to if you're lagging on a particular framework. Customers can also leverage our crosswalking capability and park the data out of 853 into another framework, because We have automated crosswalking, and we're working very closely with watsonx right now to do that inside the watsonx platform. So, this, I initially thought when I talked to companies that the reporting on the bottom was just sort of a nice to have, but I've been told time and time again that this is a great way to socialize the completeness of a program, where it might lag, where you might want to address gaps in the aggregate, and just keep it simple enough for the executives to understand the overall program and some of the pressures that information security professionals are under to comply with multiple standards and frameworks.
Yeah, beautifully said, Patrick. I think that just to add to that, I think that again, end to end, when we look at the solution suite that SEC is offering, we're addressing a lot of different types of personas. We're offering some level of deep technical views and visibility. And I think the executive dashboard here in CyberSaint really does offer, that simplicity in how are we doing against security and compliance overall? How are we doing against the different types of frameworks? And it really showcases, the flexibility and integration between the products, because we understand today, again, with the existing types of challenges with other types of proprietary tools and third and fourth party vendors, that they don't want to add another challenge to their list. But I think that what we're offering here is going to, again, be proactive and help reduce the noise, so that way they can really assess where they are overall in their security and compliance and risk posture.
Absolutely.
All right, and that was it for my demo.
Well done, Janet. Really enjoyed that. All right. Well, I think we've covered a fair amount of ground, haven't we, Janet? So I think with that, we'll thank everybody. Just reiterate how excited I am to be working with IBM. It's been a genuine pleasure to go to market together with a solution that really brings a level of risk management to CNAP that hasn't been seen before. And as Janet said, it does it in a way that doesn't get into tool sprawl, doesn't get into complicating it. We're really at every juncture simplifying the overall approach and adding just additional powerful analysis to the toolkit for professionals and customers.
Beautifully said. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And again, we're really looking forward to how we move forward with our integration here. Keep an eye out on us, because we'll continue to, again, expand on the frameworks, continue building on the automation and that end-to-end story. So it's going to be a great, great journey moving forward here.
Thank you, Janet. Terrific. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.